I can look back at one childhood summer and it feels enormous. Then I look at the last 3 adult years and they feel like one fast blur. I used to think time itself must have changed. But the strange part is that the clock is the one thing that did not change. People everywhere will tell you that time literally begins moving faster as you age. They feel like the months and years are accelerating, picking up speed as they go. I used to believe that too, but if you look at the research, the more careful explanation lives entirely in your memory, not in physics. The universe is not spinning any faster around the sun today than it did when you were 10. Your brain is just keeping a different kind of record of those rotations. What shrank was not time itself, it was how many distinct handles memory had left on it. So the real question is not what the clock did, it is what memory did. You see, psychology splits how we experience time into two completely different things. There is the time you feel right now, passing in the moment, and then there is the time you judge later, looking back in hindsight. They call that retrospective timing. And this kind of hindsight judgment depends heavily on the actual remembered content left behind in your head. Picture a stretch of your life as a bookshelf. When you look back at a year, you are just scanning that shelf. Childhood often fills the space with many separate, distinct books. You have a bright book for a trip to the lake, another one for meeting a new friend, another for learning a new game. Every first time event gets its own cover, but adult routine works differently. You take hundreds of normal, repeated days and you stack them all into just a few thick, identical folders. And once you see the shelf that way, the next question is what fills it. The answer is novelty. When you are a kid, almost everything is a first. Your brain cannot run on autopilot, it must pay close attention. And every time your situation changes, a new place, a new friend, a new set of rules, your brain draws a hard line. Psychology calls these lines event boundaries. They are contextual shifts that organize your continuous real world experience into separable memory units. Novelty literally supports memory formation. So every time you cross one of those lines, your brain prints a completely new book. It gives it a unique cover, binds it tightly, and slides it onto the shelf. You end up with a massive collection of individual stories. So childhood often wins not because it had more hours, but because it had more divisions. This brings us to how the brain judges the past. There is a classic idea in psychology called the storage size model. When you try to figure out how long a period was, your brain does not check an internal clock. It checks how much stuff it saves. It looks for retrievable memory content. The more memories you can pull up, the longer that interval feels when you look back. It is a simple equation. Memory richness expands the duration you remember. If you look at that shelf and see a massive row of individual books, your brain naturally assumes it must have taken a very long time to write all of them. The sheer amount of data makes the space expand in your mind, but quantity alone is not the whole story. As you grow older, your days start to repeat. You wake up at the same time, take the same commute, and do the same work. Life becomes highly familiar. Familiarity is comfortable, but it comes with a hidden cost. It drastically reduces separability in your recollection. When Monday looks exactly like Thursday, your brain does not bother to create new event boundaries. There is no reason to. The days just blur into each other because there are fewer meaningful contextual changes to mark the time passing. This is the trap of adulthood. Routine does not only make life predictable, it makes whole stretches of life easier to compress afterward. You look back at a full year of hard work, and instead of a massive row of distinct books, you just find one single, thin folder. That idea sounds modern, but someone noticed it long before modern timing theory existed. In 1890, William James tried to explain something almost everyone notices sooner or later. He wanted to answer a simple question. Why does the same stretch of life seem shorter as we grow older? This was not a modern lab experiment. In the principles of psychology, he just compared how time feels while it passes versus how it feels in retrospect. He noticed that varied, interesting experiences and empty, familiar routine leave very different after effects in memory. And his answer is the part worth remembering. James argued that monotony and familiarity make stretches of life shrink in recollection. But a richer, varied experience makes those same stretches widen. He explicitly noted that the exact same space of time seems shorter as we grow older. Think about that. He did not have the modern language of storage size models, but he saw the core insight early. Time in hindsight depends entirely on the texture of your remembered life, not on the ticking of the clock. This historical intuition matches exactly how we understand retrospective memory today. Your adult routine feels compressed in hindsight because the texture of your memory has simply thinned out. The days are too familiar, so your brain stops keeping the receipts. But later psychology sharpened that intuition into a more precise mechanism. Current reviews emphasize that the older storage size idea needed an upgrade. It is not just about hoarding raw information or counting every single detail you can remember. Not all the information remembered matters equally. Modern models focus on the contextual change account. This means your brain looks for meaningful shifts in your environment, your emotions, or your social context. A big change creates a sharp boundary. It tells your brain that one event has ended and a completely new one has started. That separation is what really stretches out the feeling of time. Many meaningful shifts will always lengthen your remembered time far more than just undifferentiated repetition. So now the adult year problem becomes clearer. You can live a completely full year. You can work hard, pay the bills, and get a massive amount done. But your life often repeats similar routes, similar tasks, and similar environments. You do the exact same things in the exact same rooms. Because of that lack of change, fewer distinct memory markers survive. The year was full of action, but it remains thinly segmented in hindsight. Your brain simply did not need to draw many new lines. This follows directly from memory density and contextual change accounts of retrospective duration. The fewer separate books the mind can pull from the shelf, the smaller the whole season starts to look. So, what does that mean for the way the feeling shows up in everyday life? It creates a very strange contradiction. You see, psychology sharply separates prospective timing from retrospective timing. Prospective timing is how you feel the clock ticking right now in the moment. Retrospective timing is how you judge it tomorrow or next year. This whole phenomenon is about hindsight, not about every moment in passing. Think about a completely routine Tuesday at work. While it is happening, the interval can drag. The hours feel incredibly slow. You watch the clock and it barely moves. But because that Tuesday was exactly like last Tuesday, it leaves almost zero memory markers behind. Your brain does not save it. So when you look back on that same week later, it seems extremely brief. The days were slow to live, but fast to remember. And that distinction is the key to why the phenomenon feels so weird. You do not have to believe the universe is literally moving faster. The right model explains why childhood summers feel huge without saying the clock changed speed. Recent work on life tempo judgments keeps memory accessibility and even richness at the very center of the explanation. Vividness, novelty, and remembered segmentation are what enlarge a period in hindsight. When you look back, your brain sees a massive amount of highly segmented data. That is why a single childhood summer feels so completely massive. It left an incredible amount of evidence that it happened. Back to that shelf. Think about how you built it when you were young. You loaded it with many thin, bright, and separate books. Every day was a different story because your brain was constantly drawing new lines. But as an adult, routine steps in and changes the way you store your life. You take long stretches of time, entire seasons, maybe even years, and you just file them away in a few thick, identical binders. When you look back at the last 3 years, you do not see thousands of unique events. You just see one giant, heavy block of time. The shelf did not get shorter, it just held fewer separate books. And that leaves the final correction. When you compare that massive childhood summer to your recent adult years, neither feeling is a lie. You might feel betrayed by the clock. But the physics of the universe has not changed. Your experience of that time is completely real, just recorded differently. You do not have to choose between the calendar and your mind. Both are true. The summer really was the same number of days, and memory gave it far more room to live.